Hello cloud experts. So the amount of data is increasing day by day, and that is bringing in new problems to enterprises to store that data. And for that we have something called as S3, which is a simple storage service available in AWS. My name is Sanjay Kumar and I'm a cloud and AWS trainer and consultant. So let us understand what is Amazon S3. S3, which is typically called as simple storage service. So it is basically a simple object-based storage. We will understand what is S3. S3 is a secure, scalable and highly durable storage service. It is object-based storage, so you cannot use it for installing some operating system images and some other limitation, but it is object-based storage where you can store anything else other than the operating system images and few other things. Simple web service to store and retrieve data. So it gives you a URL, and that URL allows you to store data and retrieve data. So you can access this data globally from anywhere, and this is used as a simple web service spread across multiple devices and multiple facilities. The data what you store in S3 is actually replicated across multiple devices as well as multiple facilities, so they will give you high reliability and high durability. What are those terms? We'll talk about it. So it allows you to upload files between 0 to 5 terabytes in size, but in a single put, in a single write message, you can put up to 5 GB in a single write message, and above 100 MB files, it is recommended to use something called as multi-part upload. So if you have files above 100 MB, it is recommended that you should always use multi-part upload. So we have something called as bucket. Bucket is nothing but something similar to folder. Inside folder, we have something called as files, and these files are typically called as objects. So just to understand, in case of folder, folders are typically called as something called as bucket, and objects are actually the files. So we have files as objects and folders as buckets. Files are stored in buckets, and all these files are actually called as objects. By default, all the files are private. You will not be able to see it from internet, and it will not be available for public viewing. You have to enable these things whenever you create some buckets or some files. And this typically comes with almost unlimited storage. The storage is almost unlimited for S3. S3 have a universal namespace. That means the bucket name what you use should be globally unique. So whatever bucket name, so for example, I cannot use bucket name as Amazon123 because maybe already somebody has already used that particular name. So I will not be able to use that name. So bucket name has to be globally unique. And just to take some examples, http://ctg, which is cloudtrainingguru.s3.amazonaws.com. So this is one of the, whenever you are creating some buckets in Northern Virginia region, you will have this kind of URL which says s3.amazonaws.com. However, if you are creating this bucket in some other region, you will have ctg dot the name of the region and amazonaws.com. So there is a difference. If the bucket is created in Northern Virginia region, it will have s3.amazonaws.com, but if it is in other region, it will have the region ID as well as amazonaws.com with the bucket name. S3 bucket, it allow you to store objects which are typically files into buckets which are typically folders. So it is actually like folders, and inside folder you have file, but in S3 we call it buckets, and inside buckets you have something called as objects. Bucket name should be unique across all regions, all accounts. So one bucket name cannot be used twice. So bucket name has to be very unique, and it should not be repeated anywhere else in the world in AWS infrastructure. That includes all the regions and all the accounts globally. S3 is a global service, but buckets are created in a region. S3 is a global service, it is available globally, but buckets are always created in certain regions. So that means your data is actually stored in a given region. Bucket name should be no uppercase, no underscore, can have 3 to 63 characters, doesn't contain any IP address, and must start with a lowercase letter or a number. So it doesn't support any uppercase, any underscore, can have 3 to 63 characters, doesn't contain any IP address, and it also should start with a lowercase letter and number. Now there are various features here. It is built for 99.99% availability. That means this service is always highly available and built for 99.99% availability, but it is guaranteed as 99.9% availability. It also guarantees 99.999, which is typically 11 nines, so we call it 11 nines durability. That means your files are available all the time and it will not be lost in the AWS infrastructure. It comes with something called as tiered storage. What is tiered storage? We'll talk about in the next couple of slides. But tiered storage means you can have different storage tier where you can store your data to reduce your cost and how you access your data. Lifecycle management. So whenever you have some life cycle, what you can do is you can move your data from one type of storage to another type of storage, and you can reduce your cost, and after a certain period of time you can also delete this data from your storage. Versioning, you can have multiple versions of the same file in your S3 bucket. Encryption, it supports multiple types of encryption, encryption at rest as well as encryption at transit. And it also allows you to have something called as MFA delete, where you will not be able to delete it without using a MFA tool. That MFA tool can be a hardware tool or a software application available in your smartphone. So without using that MFA, you will not be able to delete any bucket. So that means it comes up with some additional layer of security where nobody should be able to delete your bucket in your AWS infrastructure. Now, what are the storage classes and tiers and their life cycle? So we have various different type of storage classes. One is called as S3 standard. S3 standard, which is having durability, high durability, which have frequent access. However, if you need something where you need to have something infrequent access and you want to reduce your cost, you can always go with another tier which is called as S3IA, S3 infrequent access. However, if you really don't want to have this particular availability and durability, you can always go with S3 one zone IA. Typically, your S3 data is stored in multiple zones, multiple availability zones. If you really don't want to have that much durability, you can always go with one zone and reduce the cost further. However, if this data is no more required frequently, what you can do is you can store this in the archival, and that archival is called as S3 Glacier. So S3 Glacier is the archival mechanism where you have typically the access time of minutes to few hours, and then we have another version of S3 Glacier which is typically called as Glacier Deep Archive, where you can have access time of more than 12 hours or so. However, if you really want to do all these things manually, what you can do is you can create some lifecycle rules and move your data from S3 standard to S3 infrequent access, S3 infrequent access to an S3 Glacier, and S3 Glacier to delete. Let's say after 12 months this data should be deleted from S3 Glacier and I will no more be charged for that particular data. However, if you really want AWS to manage all these things automatically, you can also go with something called as S3 intelligent tiering, where this transition can automatically happen based on the algorithms which are available in AWS. Now, just to take an example, if I talk about S3 standards which have got 11 nines of durability, but if I look at this the design for availability, let's say there are like availability zones, so it will be stored in more than 3 availability zones. This is again stored in more than 3 availability zones, But if you look at one zone IA, one zone infrequent access, the data will be stored only in one availability zone. So if that availability zone is lost, that means your data will be lost. So this is a quick comparison between all the different storage comparison, and this data is taken from aws.amazon.com S3/storage classes. However, in case of S3, the access is in milliseconds, S3 integrating milliseconds, S3 standard IA milliseconds. In case of S3 Glacier, the access time can be minutes to hours, and in case of Deep Archive, it can go up to hours. So this is the typical comparison between the different storage classes. Now, in S3, what are the things you pay for? You pay for the storage, which is typically per GB. You pay for the request for the reads in that particular S3, how you are reading that S3 data. You also pay if you are using storage management. If you are using storage management, there is a pricing attached to it as well. Data transfer pricing, whenever you are transferring data from one place to another place, you pay for that. There is something called as transfer acceleration. In transfer acceleration, you can typically write your data to edge centers, which are typically content delivery networks or called as CloudFront. You can copy your data in the edge centers, and from edge centers, this data can be written into S3. So this is called as transfer acceleration, and you need pay for that as well. And also you pay for cross-region replication pricing. So whenever you replicate your data, replicate your buckets from one region to another region, you pay for that as well. Amazon Glacier and use cases. Typically, Amazon Glacier is a secure, durable, and low-cost storage, and retrieval times are from minutes to hours. However, if you really want further the lowest cost, this is low cost, but if you really want the lowest cost, so you have to go for something called as S3 Glacier Deep Archive. So S3 Glacier Deep Archive is something which will give you the lowest cost of storage in AWS infrastructure, where retrieval time of up to 12 hours is acceptable. So you can have up to 12 hours of retrieval time. If that is acceptable to you, you can go with lowest cost storage, which is called as S3 Glacier Deep Archive. We also have some different storage devices which we can use to transfer data from your on-prem data centers to the AWS cloud. They are called as Snowball, Snowball Edge, and Snowmobile. So what are these things? Snowball is typically terabyte scale data, which comes in two sizes, which is typically 50 bytes and 50 terabytes and 80 terabytes. However, if you really need some compute capacity in the Snowball, you go with Snowball Edge, which typically comes with 100 TB of storage and which will have EC2 and Lambda capabilities available in the Snowball Edge. However, if you really need to transfer petabyte scale of data, then you have to go with Snowmobile, which comes in the size of 100 petabytes. So these are some of the storage devices which can be used to transfer data from your on-prem data centers to the cloud infrastructure. Amazon S3 uses, for what are the things we can use Amazon S3 for? We can use S3 for hosting our static website. We can use it for backup and recovery. We can use it for archives. We can use it for hybrid cloud storage whenever you are using your private cloud and you want to use some additional cloud capabilities, additional storage capabilities in the public cloud. You can also use S3 to store your additional data in the public cloud. And you can also use it for data lakes and big data hosting, and you can also use it for disaster recovery mechanism and many more usage of S3. That's all in this session. Next, let's have a quick demo in the next session about the S3. So thank you for watching this session and look forward to see you in the next session.